Are you looking for an alternative to moving to Aledo? Well, if so, today I am going to give you the best alternative to Aledo, and I'm going to make them go head to head. So today we're doing Aledo versus Brock and all that comes with it. My name's Jared with Living in Aledo, and I've done a few of these videos on Aledo versus other areas. And so unlike my Aledo versus Weatherford video, Aledo versus Brock today really is going to be more of an apples to apples comparison. If you have this strong desire to make sure you have a great school district, whether that's for resale value or because you have kids in the schools, Aledo and Brock are both going to be great options. And we're going to do a comparison today, head to head. We're going to talk about taxes, home values, commutes, services, development, and obviously the schools. We're going to dive into that as well. So Aledo versus Brock, that's what we're doing today. If this is your first time on the channel and you haven't seen anything else, hit that subscribe button, come back to the channel later. But let's jump into Aledo versus Brock. Okay, we're gonna kick this list off with the first thing on everyone's mind when they're thinking about moving to the Aledo area, and that is the schools. So how do Brock and Aledo compare? What's the differences? What should we be aware of? Like, what's important to know? And honestly, Brock is a strong competitor to Aledo. So if you go to niche.com, you're gonna see that Aledo is rated as the #1 best school district in Parker County, and you're gonna see that Brock is rated #2. Okay, that's good. Well, then how do they maybe compare? What are the breakdowns? Aledo gets an A rating and Brock gets an A-. Okay, not a huge deal. What is that? Where does that come into play? Why is that? Honestly, it's probably because of the size. They don't have, they get like a B rating when it comes to like activities, clubs, stuff like that. Okay, so that may or may not be a negative for you. Maybe you want a smaller school. So Brock ISD is going to be a smaller school district. There is one elementary school, there is one middle school, there is one high school. Currently, they're growing as well. There's lots of development going on, so that's not going to stay that way forever. But with that, you're going to have a smaller administration. You might have smaller classroom sizes. Really, as they grow, that's going to balance out or maybe change and shift. But Aledo, while it's not a major school district like Frisco where you have like 6 high schools, it is growing, it is expanding. I do have a video on the future of Aledo ISD. You should check that out. There's going to be a new high school in the near future. So they're growing, they're hitting capacity, more elementary schools are planned, and we're growing in the Aledo area. So there's pros and cons to that, right? There's, we have a really highly rated school district, really highly rated sports programs, super competitive, strong sense of community. And Brock is similar. I don't mean this in a negative, I might say like Brock is Aledo's little brother. Smaller school district, still competitive sports. They don't have as many like state championships. They do have some in some of their sports. Still a competitive sporting environment, but it's not going to be as competitive as Aledo. I've talked with people who they want to be in a good school district, but they also want their kids to be able to play sports and be able to play for the fun of it and maybe not be as uber competitive as Aledo might be. So maybe they were leaning towards Brock. There's going to be probably fewer total extracurricular types of activities in the Brock area, and a smaller school comes with its pros and cons. You're going to have less mixing and mingling as you go through the system. You're going to have less, maybe options for your kids to find the group they fit in. Maybe less programs to participate in. So that's going to be something to think about. We're going to get into really pricing, values, like what you get when you buy an Aledo versus Brock in a minute. So stick around for that. But Brock is a really good school district. It is so good that when people are, thinking about Aledo and trying to figure out if Aledo is the best fit for them, Brock is a good option to consider depending on your personal circumstances. So Aledo is where a lot of people end up. Aledo is much larger than Brock, but there are some really compelling factors we're going to get into in a minute why someone might pick Brock over Aledo, depending on what is most important to them. So watch this video. If you have questions that come up as you watch, as I talk, as I say things that maybe you agree with, you don't agree with, or I'm not clear on, put those in the description below. I'd love to hear what you think about Aledo versus Brock. Okay, next up on the list, number 2, and this is an important one if you're really thinking about Aledo versus Brock or looking for the best fit for your family. But that's gonna be basically the cost. So we're gonna talk about property taxes, we're gonna talk about what you get, we're gonna talk home values, and this is the item, the specific thing that tends to pull people away from Aledo into Brock the most. This is gonna be the heaviest weighted item that gets people to Brock over Aledo. Because you do have a difference there. So first off, I want to talk about taxes. And the surprising thing is that Brock ISD taxes are actually slightly more expensive than Aledo ISD taxes. So that's not going to be the thing that draws people. And we're not talking much. We're talking Aledo ISD tax rate is 1.2%. Brock ISD tax rate is 1.255%. So minimal. Now, when you're looking at Brock and the homes that you're getting, most of those homes are going to sit on 2+ acres. There's some developments that may have homes on 1 acre. There's a small handful of communities where you're going to find homes smaller than that. But for the most part in the Brock ISD area, you're looking at 1 or 2+ minimum acres, kind of across the board, whether it's older homes, newer homes, whatever. Aledo, you're going to have a much wider variety of what's available. You've got the master plan communities, you've got the older neighborhoods that are just normal residential neighborhoods with no HOA stuff. You have, maybe the older traditional 90s HOA neighborhoods where they got a community pool. You have neighborhoods like mine, the older, developments where everyone's on an acre. So you come in and we have 175 homes in our neighborhood, 1 entrance, 1 exit. We're all on an acre. It's super great. Like, you have those kind of homes. You have gated communities. You have, some really high end. You have some very affordable. You have a huge variety in the Aledo area. Whereas Brock is going to have less of a variety. We're going to talk about kind of what to expect with prices really just right now. But one of the interesting things is that the median price in the Aledo area, which you've heard me say before, roughly $700,000 median. Brock is actually about the same. So you're like, well, Jared, why, if it's the same price, why would people be attracted to Brock? Well, just telling someone that the median price is the same doesn't give the full story, because the median home and lot are larger in Brock than they are in Aledo. So, the median home price in Aledo is like 700-ish, but that's like got homes in Morningstar, that has homes in Walsh, that homes in Parks of Aledo. All of these homes on less than a 1/4 acre are inside that median. And so in Brock, maybe rather than getting a 3,000 square foot home for $700,000, maybe you're getting a 3,400 square foot home for $700,000. Maybe rather than getting a home in a residential development on 0.18 acres, maybe you're getting 2 acres for the same price. So what I have seen generally, and this does not hold hard and fast for every type of property, is that if you are looking for equivalent homes, so same size home, same lot size, maybe similar year build, basically the same home. You pick up one home in Aledo and you move it to Brock, you're going to save $100,000 to $200,000 buying that home in Brock. So that is a major reason that people will consider moving from Aledo to Brock, or if they're coming to the west side of the Metroplex and they want to get as much bang for their buck as possible, Brock is a good option. Like we just talked about, still has really good schools. It obviously has that rural feel. It's more rural than Aledo. You get the green space, you get the drive home, but you're gonna save a fair amount of money if some of the other things we're talking about today are not more important factors. So that's number 2. And honestly, that is the biggest reason people will choose Brock over Aledo. But let's stick around and see about what the other options are. Okay, next up, number 3 on the list is gonna be really kind of your proximity to like local dining, shopping, and maybe some of that commercial type development between Aledo versus Brock. And now this might not be a big deal. Maybe you're coming from a rural environment and you don't really care. But this might be a big adjustment if you're coming from a larger city or a larger metropolitan area and you're looking for that more rural feel, but you haven't lived in a more rural setting before. And again, Aledo's not really a rural town. It is kind of a suburb of Fort Worth, but it does have a more rural feel. And I've talked about this a couple of times in Aledo videos, is that there's not a lot or a large selection of like great dining options or shopping options. Like, they're coming and they're improving, and there's some really good restaurants that have opened up the last couple of years in the Aledo area. But I would not say that dining is a strong suit of Aledo. And then I have to tell you about Brock, which has like 3 or 4 total restaurants inclusive of fast food places. So I typically avoid fast food at all costs. I'll spend more money to eat at a restaurant just because I think it's going to be a little bit better for me, and I probably eat out too much anyways. But Brock has very little, almost no commercial development. You've got one small like downtown-ish type setup where the schools are. It's basically a 3-way stop with a red light. Not a 4-way stop, a 3-way stop. You have, I think it's the Hungry Jalapeno. That's a locally owned restaurant down there. It's not a franchise. It's not a big corporate thing. That's just locally owned. You've got a locally owned coffee shop. I hung out there one day and I met like the owner's dad or something. But other than that, it's like a couple of fast food options, like a Chicken Express, maybe a Sonic. And so if that type of environment appeals to you, Brock is great. Personally, I prefer a little bit more convenience. I grew up in Arlington. I've lived in Fort Worth. We're out in Aledo. We've been here for years. I do like the ability to go grab a quick bite to eat and it not be fast food. So, we have, Dane's Craft Barbecue. We have the District Butcher. We have Jake's Hamburgers. We have the shops at Willow Park. We have the District at Willow Park, which is like a new commercial development. So Aledo's going to have basically, at this point, it's like a 20-year head start on that type of development. Now, I'm not saying that it would take 20 years for Brock to catch up to where we are, but Aledo really didn't have much development at all. And I think that we're going to see probably a similar life trajectory or evolution of the Brock area. It might not take 20 years for them to start doing commercial development, but with Aledo, it kind of did. So that's something to think about. If you are looking and you want to be able to like go grab a bite to eat with your family, you want to go to a sit-down restaurant, and you want more than 1 or 2 options, Aledo's going to be the strong edge. If you don't want to drive into Weatherford, right? You could do that. You could drive into Weatherford. But if you're looking for like fancy date nights, then you're going to go all the way into Fort Worth, which isn't a great option. If you're all about in Brock, that's a pretty good drive. You do have the master plan communities, the Walsh, the Morningstar, the stuff like that for that type of development as well. But to be clear, you can get all of your daily essentials not terribly far away in the Weatherford area if you live in Brock. But if you live in Aledo, you've got the Walmart, you've got the HEB. The Costco is in Weatherford, but it really is on the Aledo side of Weatherford. So you're kind of cutting across Weatherford to get to it if you're coming from Brock. For us, we live on the west side of Aledo, and it's like 6 or 7 minutes to Costco for us. So the shopping, the amenities, all that's going to be easier in Aledo. You still have access to Weatherford. You get all your daily essentials. You still have restaurants if you drive into Weatherford, but you do not have them local or what feels like local like we do in the Aledo area. So let's stick around because next up, we're going to talk about how that, location and need and drive time all adds up when it comes to the kind of geography and where you sit in the commute. And that's coming up next. Okay, so number 4 on the list, I'm going to kind of lump in a number of things that all kind of fall into the same category. And that's going to be proximity to employment, to jobs, the commute, and kind of that general location of what to expect geographically and how that will impact you. So if you are going to be Fort Worth centric on your employment, Aledo's going to have the clear edge. You're going to be 20 to 25 minutes from Fort Worth. In the Aledo area, if you're in Brock, you're probably going to be 30 to 50 minutes. One thing about Brock ISD is it's kind of like long and narrow, so it's going to parts of Brock are going to get very close to I-20, and then some we're going to go like all the way down to like Lipan. You're going to be 10 to 15 minutes, off 20 to get to some of the major residential areas like Sugar Tree, the golf course community. And then I have a client buying a home over there right now, and that community is kind of winding and deep, and they're 5 minutes into the neighborhood. So you get to the front gate, you're still 5 minutes from the house. So you might really have some drive time add up if you're in Brock. And then you're going to have access to the employers, which we talked about. Fort Worth, you do have Weatherford. It's not as major of an employer as Fort Worth is. If you are interested in learning more about Weatherford, go check out the last video I released about Weatherford versus Aledo and kind of hear some of that information. And then when you're in the Brock area, you're going to have more windy roads. There's not like straight routes. Maybe you're going to have to go like north and you're going to cut this way and then go up here, or maybe you're cutting up over here and going there. You've got Dennis Road, you've got Old Dennis Road, so that's a little bit confusing sometimes. But really, you're going to have to get to 20, and then you're going to go in that way. That's the only way to get it. So, and then again, in the Weatherford video, I talk about how some of the I-20 backs up when you pass Aledo, so that might play into it. I do have a couple of clients buying in Brock right now, and so why would someone pick Brock over Aledo? given some of the other stuff we've talked about, when it comes to schools maybe, or what we might talk about in a minute, the services, emergency services and stuff. Well, Brock is great for someone who is more work from home, who doesn't have to go into town very frequently, who is looking for a more rural, less developed feel, and the drive is not a major influencer, or they're willing to take that drive for the benefits. Maybe it's the cost, like we talked about the pricing. One of the couples that's buying, they're retired, so they don't have to go into Fort Worth frequently. The other is in the military, so he's going to be going to the base. So he is going to have a longer drive, and he's going to take it every day, but he's okay with that because they're able to get a home that they love at a really affordable price, the lower end of their price range, which will allow them to add a pool or do some other stuff with their budget. So, Brock made a lot of sense for them. So there's pros and cons. It's not always one or the other is a better fit, but it is important to know you are going to be, I say a lot, you're going to be significantly further out, maybe as much as twice as far out from Fort Worth if you're in the Brock area, and that could be a factor. So stick around. We're going to talk about some of the emergency services and general services that these cities are able to provide, or maybe lack thereof. Okay, now number 5 on the list is actually going to be something that neither city actually is like a really strong presence for, and that's going to be like emergency services like fire department, police department, maybe some infrastructure stuff. But I want to jump into this one is that really neither city has their own police department. They both primarily rely on the Parker County Sheriff. Now, Aledo has an edge in this because the school district, Aledo ISD, has its own small police department. Aledo is in the early stages of trying to get their own police department set up, but currently it's Parker County Sheriff, which is like the primary source of like law enforcement if we need it. Now Aledo does benefit from the fact that Willow Park and Hudson Oaks both have their own police departments. And so you do have a police presence around the area, which is helpful in general, but we don't have our own police department yet. And then Brock doesn't either. But Brock is a little further out. It's really just the Parker County Sheriff for them. Secondly is fire departments. So again, neither city has their own fire department. And really there's a Parker County like fire department set up, like we have and emergency services. I have a good buddy who is a paramedic in Parker County. And those are obviously separate services, but Aledo doesn't have its own emergency services or fire department. But Parker County has a handful of different like stations around the area, a couple in the Aledo area, which is nice and helpful. But then Brock it's a little further out there. I'm actually not sure where the Parker County station is over in that area. But what can happen is, like, what's the negative other than it could take longer for them to get there, is your insurance can be impacted. So if you are like more than 5 miles from a fire department, that can negatively impact your insurance rates. So, and really it's not just a fire department, but a non-voluntary fire department. So there are some areas, and I think my friends who had issues with this, they had trouble getting an insurance quote that was reasonable because while they had a fire department that was close to them, it was a voluntary fire department. So that's something to think about. Aledo's gonna have an edge because of the density of the population. So there are more like services placed geographically close to Aledo area. And then the roads in the Aledo area, because of the large amount of development and increase in like residential development, a lot of the roads have been redone more recently, or they're more maybe like planned like city roads to a degree, if that makes sense. For the most part, neither of them are gonna have like sidewalks on these big highways or anything, which they shouldn't. Really, they're not even highways, they're like county roads. And so one thing that I've noted is like in the Brock area, there's not a whole lot of straight roads, right? These are like county roads. They kind of wind around, they go up and down. They're kind of narrow sometimes. And so just the general infrastructure is going to be a little bit better in the Aledo area because it's newer and there's been more of that development. No, I think Brock will catch up at some point, don't get me wrong. And maybe at some point they'll even have their own services like Aledo is working towards. But that's something to note, that the Aledo area was going to have more services in the general area that benefit the Aledo area more than what Brock has access to or around them in general right now. Okay, now I want to take an informal poll. Whether you are moving to the area or not, if you've watched this video, put in the comment section which of these cities do you think sounds more interesting to you? Which one would be a better fit for you, whether you're moving here or not? And if you are considering a move to the greater Aledo area, Aledo, Weatherford, Parker County, Brock, and you haven't subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel. I have a lot of good content, helpful content, useful content for those of you who are considering moving to the Aledo area. And if you already have a trip planned, reach out. Let me get some time on my calendar for you. Let me help you make this move and transition as easy as possible. Happy to have that conversation around what's going to be the best fit for your family, whether that's Aledo, whether that's Brock, whether that is Weatherford. I'd love to have those conversations, and I'd love to help families get to the next home and maybe that dream home.